Hi, this is Dr. Steven Seiler. It's January. I'm a Zwift rider. I did quite a lot of riding last year, but I hit December and I was kind of tired and, kind of feeling a little stale. So I said, I'm going to quit the racing for a little while and then start a build back up and just kind of collect some kilometers and do some low intensity work. But I need a little bit of interval training. So I was looking for a high intensity session, not too crazy, but just trying to get back, starting to gear up for some racing. Right now, my Tax Neo bike got broke, so I got to send it in. I'm waiting on a replacement in a few days. And so hopefully when it comes back, I'll be ready to start easing into some Zwift races, these high intensity races. So need a workout. I look in the Zwift library of training sessions and I find this session, which is a Mat Hayman Paris-Roubaix 1 session. Lasts between 60 and 90 minutes, so that's where you find it in the Zwift training library. And it looks kind of interesting because it's got a lot of green. It's kind of a threshold session, but it has these blocks where you are at a pretty high percentage of your 60-minute FTP, about 90%. But then on top of that, you surge every 2 minutes for 20 seconds. I actually end up spending more than 20 seconds because you got to accelerate and you're coming back down. So it was closer to 30 seconds total kind of surge. And then you come back down and you hold power. You don't get that, 20 or 30 second chill right after the push. You hold power. And so this was a workout, and it was called the Paris-Roubaix. There's a reason, of course, because there's a story here. And that story is that Mat Hayman loves this race. He's retired just recently, but in 2016, he wins the Paris-Roubaix. He beats Tom Boonen to the line. You got Edvald Boasson Hagen behind him, a five-person group that makes it to the end, 260-kilometer war of attrition, as the Paris-Roubaix always is. He comes out on top for the first time in 15 tries, because that was his 15th Paris-Roubaix. Now, what's even more interesting about it this is what he looked like about 5-6 weeks before, because he breaks his arm, breaks the radius up near the elbow during a race, and it looks like the entire classic season is over for him. But he doesn't give up, so he starts out with this configuration, using a ladder to help him stabilize his arm while he's on his trainer. Doesn't have a smart trainer, but then he gets kind of clued into this Zwift and starts using Zwift and speaks to his coach, Kevin Polton, and says, hey, I think there's some, I can do something with this. And so they start devising workouts, and that workout that is on Zwift is basically designed to recreate this, which is the fact that in the Paris-Roubaix, you've just got lots of these surges associated with, going from the asphalt to the pave, trying to stay in their appropriate group, not getting dropped, just hundreds. He says hundreds of 30-second high wattage efforts. Not 30 minutes, not 3 minutes, but just lots and lots of 30-second efforts that are on top of, a high baseline power output. So that's what he needed to prepare for. And that's what this workout has. If you see, now it's not hundreds. In fact, it's only 12. Okay. And that was plenty for me, let me tell you. So this is just kind of it gives you the idea, as it says, of the kind of training he might have done. I would hesitate to ask how many of these repeats he did in his sessions, but I can say that for most of us mortals, this is a good workout. And so I gave it a whirl, and I did it 3 times actually. And the first 2 times, just as it suggests, I didn't get to the finish. I was pretty much cooked in my legs after 8 repeats. But But here you see all 3 times. First is the green one, then the orange one, and then the blue one. And really, they stack up on top of each other. It's really hard to say that one was better than the other, but all I can say is that third one, it was better, it felt better, and I was able to go to the end. Okay, so what happened? I should say that these were done on January the 22nd, and then I did the second one on January the 23rd because I was kind of ticked off. And then the third one, I had about 10 hours of cycling in my legs, lots of good 2 and 3 hour sessions, and it was done on the 28th, about 5 days later, with just pretty much low intensity cycling in between. So here are the 3 heart rate responses, or the 3 workouts, the heart rate response. And the first thing I want to point out is the one thing I didn't like about this workout was it's only a 5-minute warm-up. And this 55-year-old body needs more. I like to have a 15-minute warm-up before I start any kind of high-intensity stuff. So before races, I always, do a 20-minute warm-up. So the first time I get caught a little bit off guard, and then you got these 10-second sprints that are after only 5 minutes. And so my heart rate seems to be a bit high. And that got fixed just by adding 10 minutes of easy warm-up in front of this workout. So really it's 10 plus the 5, and then the workout starts, okay? And that seems to have settled me down, and you see heart rate here, those second 2 times where I've got the little bit extra warm-up. Now there's no drift here at 265 watts. But then once the main portion of the training starts, these blocks with 2 minutes at 90% and then the surges, then you start seeing that, this starts stacking up. There's partial recovery, but overall heart rate's getting higher all the way. But it is just like stacked right on top of each other, each of these sessions. And then a 5-minute recovery, and then I start again. And I can tell you those first 2 times, just already the first one, I'm saying, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm cooked. But then the third one, it was tough, but I just felt different. I felt better. And so I was able to keep going. So the cardiovascular response doesn't tip you off, but at the muscular level, there's been a change. I feel better. And so it's almost as if you would say a different way is now, at the muscular level, I am able to continue, and therefore heart rate drifts up. The typical drift associated with that motor units are fatiguing, and the brain is recruiting more muscle to do the same work. So this is really important because it's kind of an explanation in terms of sometimes a threshold session based on power, average power, is not a threshold session. It is more. It ends up being a very high stress, high intensity session. Other times, if the distribution of power was different, then it would be more like an upper end of, an FTP session. So be careful that there can be displacement between the actual external workload and the internal workload. And this is kind of an example of that. Now, here's that workout. Again, flat during at the lower end of my threshold range, and then with the way this is organized, doing right at my FTP power on average, but in a very, non-steady state way. That's a tough session. Good training for Zwift races, good training for the kinds of stochastic races we see in mountain bike and, lots of cycling races. And then this is what it looks like in numbers. Okay, so I took the numbers off of this program that John's Peters and I had developed, this Endura program. So the average power for the different blocks, the 20-minute block, the 15-minute sets, and you see they line up. The 15-minute set 1 for each workout, it goes up a bit as I'm getting better, and probably it's a combination of a little bit higher power during the surges, but also holding power even better, 20 at 280 or so, 285, not coming down at all, below that, and that gives a higher average. So, and then at the end, you see that this actually should be 305, not 205. I apologize, but it's 305. But what I end up here showing you is a way of quantifying what you might call the high intensity repeatability. One way is just to say, well, I was able to finish the workout, so obviously I'm getting better. I'm able to finish the 2 full blocks, the 12 reps. Yes, and then we can also quantify it in terms of the accumulated W prime in the C critical power W prime model. How much W prime is being accumulated during those blocks, and you see that's inching upward. But another thing is I've created this little ratio between the W prime energy, meaning the work above that red line that we've defined in this case as critical power, 325 for me in this example, versus how much recovery do I need? And the recovery you have to think of as both a combination of how much time and then how far below critical power. The farther you go below, if I just drop down to 0, then creatine phosphate and other byproducts are going to recover and be removed faster than if I'm at holding a higher power. So, the bigger the gap between CP and where I'm at, the easier to recover. Well, in races, you don't always have the luxury of dropping so far down. So this workout is about recovering not only on the fly, but recovering at a pretty high percentage of your FTP. And what you see is this ratio gets better just in the course of these 3 workouts, in the sense that this means about half a kilojoule of energy above CP for every kilojoule of energy that you might say, of recovery energy. So that ratio is about 0.46, and then it's gone up to 0.6 by the 3rd workout. So that's an improvement. That's better. And then if you take the accumulated W prime times that recovery ratio, then you get what I'm just calling a high intensity repeatability index. And you see that number is clearly getting better even in the course of these 3 workouts. So I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at repeatability, to look at that. And then finally, you might ask, okay, what's next, Dr. Seiler? What's the next step in the progression? Well, obviously one thing to do would be to surge even harder. But I think for me, the best thing I could do to continue my development and get me better able to do hard races on Zwift would just be to add another set. Okay? Now I can do 12 repeats. Can I keep extending? Okay? You either intensify or you extend. And I think if I can get to 3 sets of this, that's going to add up. Now I'm doing about an hour, 45 minutes, 3 times 15 plus the 20. That's an hour and 5 minutes of work at a pretty significant intensity with a bunch of surges. That's good training for Zwift races. And for me, I would be quite happy with being able to do that much work with that kind of repeatability. So that's what I'm going to try to get to. If I get there, then maybe I think about a bit, maybe my FTP will have inched up a little bit, or I'll try to push it just a little higher on the surges. All right? So that's what I'm going to try to do. Good luck in your training. Take care.